Welcome back to Adapt Pro. I'm Katarina Oudeman. Today's episode is a really special one. I'm joined by Ohio native and professional snowboarder Louie Vito. Don't kill me if I said it wrong. And your journey started like all the way in Bellefontaine to Olympic stage, over 20 years. Like that's really crazy impressive. At the 2026 Olympics that just passed, I know everyone was tuning in. He competed at 37, becoming, I'll say, the most seasoned half pipe snowboarder, and was still like pushing to land new tricks and all of that, which is insane. And I think that level of longevity and evolution is like exactly why I wanted you on this podcast, because Adapt Pro is all about like not only adapting to change, but growing and learning and kind of sticking with stuff. So thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited. So let's just like dive right in. I believe you're originally from Columbus. I'm from Cleveland, so kind of like different parts of Ohio. But I mentioned my dad is like huge Ohio State fan. So if you want to like kind of talk about like how growing up in Ohio was, because that's just obviously something we have in common. I think is really neat.
Yeah, I was born in Columbus, but I was raised in Bellefontaine, Ohio, small town, like 45 minutes northwest of Columbus. And I mean, it's typical small Midwestern town.
Yeah.
I love it there. I always say our claim to fame is we have the first concrete street in America, so which is because people never really know like Bellefontaine, but a lot of people in my world don't know much about Ohio, anyways, and I think they get shocked of the culture and honestly the sheer size of Ohio population wise.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, we have Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, the three C's, but it just doesn't really register with people out west and that are in the snowboarding world because they're used to the mountains and that's all that really matters to them. But I love Ohio and obviously being from Columbus, but in Ohio in general, you grow up an Ohio State fan because if you're a Browns or a Bengals fan, it's a lot more heartbreak. So at least the Buckeyes you can count on to carry it. But yeah, as you know, it's very traditional sports. Snowboarding is not really wasn't super popular when I started as far as like the mainstream understanding it. But I grew up 5 minutes from Mad River Mountain, which is like a 290 vertical foot hill, and I got started because my grandparents on my mom's side there, because my dad's from upstate New York, my mom's from Ohio. They wanted an activity for all the grandkids to do together in the winter. It's a family activity that we could all do and enjoy. So we all started skiing, and then one day my dad and I saw snowboarding and thought it looked fun, so we just tried it out. And I really lucked out. My dad's got a pretty addictive personality. When he's into something, like he is all in on it. So I always say like he developed a passion for snowboarding before I even knew what having a passion for something was. So anytime I wanted to go snowboarding, he was like, "Yeah, let's go." He was super into it, and at the time I was playing like club soccer and really into soccer, and then I was doing gymnastics, and so I would have a gymnastics meet in Chicago. My dad would drive me through the night to like Western PA to Seven Springs, and I'd wake up and we'd be there, and he's running on 3 hours of sleep, and I'd be like, "Let's go, we're going snowboarding," and just so he did a lot in that sense. But we started traveling more and more around the Midwest, and then when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, we went to a snowboard camp in Oregon in the summertime as like a reward for me doing well in school and not getting in trouble. And he did the camp as well. It was called Wendell Snowboard Camp, so it was like a week session. And there is where we kind of learned about USASA, which is a grassroots organization, and they have competitions around the country. So we're in Ohio. It's called Snow Ohio, and those competitions were in Boston Mills Brandywine, up by you in Cleveland area.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then everything started going more and more and more that direction. I started going to snowboard camp maybe for 2 weeks in the summertime. And then I went to a boarding school for snowboarding. They had snowboarding, cross-country skiing, and alpine ski racing. I went winter of 8th grade and then all through high school. And so it really just kind of snowballed, but it all started with just learning with my dad, having fun. Okay, started traveling around the Midwest, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. My my sister switched to snowboarding, my mom switched to snowboarding, and then it really became a true family activity.
Like your whole family just kind of jumped on board one day.
Yeah, I mean, my sister was really into it. She competed as well, but she was super busy with sports herself, and so a lot of times my mom was going around with my sister, my dad was going around with me, so we were always on the move. But that's how my family is. We don't really sit still. We've always kind of been super active and high energy. It's just in our nature. So it worked out great for all of us. But yeah, we were traveling a lot as a family to snowboard, and then going to nationals for USASA as a family, and it was good. It's some of the best memories is traveling around with my family snowboarding.
That's awesome. No, I totally get like the busy family life. I have five brothers and sisters,
Ooh.
and we were all in like three sports at a time, like everything from like competitive cheerleading to football, soccer, like you name it. So I don't think we were like ever at home. We were always at some type of practice or game or whatever. But it's fun. Like it's such a it's like a high pace like environment. It's fun to like support your brothers and sisters and then compete, obviously. So that's super cool. Um, Kind of like an evolution question for you. So you've been competing at like highest level for over 2 decades now. What do you think has changed the most in you, like whether that be like mentally or personally, that's allowed you to like stay at that for so long? Because like being at like an Olympic athlete, that's crazy hard. It's not like you just stay there forever. Like you got to keep working and working.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it really starts off with the base that I had, and growing up in the Midwest, it's very much kind of that blue collar mentality. The way that my parents raised my sister and myself. My dad was raised by a single immigrant mother in New York, and so the way that he kind of was brought up, and then my mom, her family was very hardworking, blue collar, kind of one of those like nothing's given to you. So I always tell this story. She gets so embarrassed, but it's like there's five siblings in her family, and like when my grandma made chocolate chip cookies, every kid had the same amount of chocolate chips in each cookie. Like everything was an equal playing field, and it was just you had to work for what you wanted. So I think that's where it kind of started, and especially growing up in the Midwest with small hills, not mountains, and I
Yeah.
go to these nationals with kids that snowboard so much. Like our seasons in Ohio were like maybe we're open by Christmas and hopefully we make it to March. And these kids have been snowboarding so much at some of the best resorts in the world. So it's kind of always that grind. And I always wanted to be the hardest worker on and off the mountain. But I did that with everything. So in like soccer, I did club soccer as well. And team sports are kind of hard because you could have the game of your life and you could still lose. So
Yeah.
my dad would always say, like especially in the rough competitions and games and other sports, if you can look yourself in the mirror and know that you gave it everything that you could, then that's all you can ask for. You can't do anything else. And then really focusing on control the controllable. You can only control how you do. You can't control anybody else, how anybody snowboards, how the judges are scoring you, because we're a subjective sport. Now to your actual question, I think there's a few things. One was, I stopped drinking and going out and stuff like that at pretty young age.
Okay.
And I started with this trainer named John Schaefer, who I met through Apollo Ono, who's, the most decorated U.S. Winter Olympian, I believe, and a mentor of mine. I wanted to see who was the most in shape Olympian, summer or winter, any sport. And it was Apollo. If you read anything about him, he's just a fanatic about it. So I talked with him and I met his trainer, and his trainer completely changed my whole life. The way that I approached working out and in the lifestyle, and he's one of the best for a reason. So I've been with
Yeah.
him for a good chunk of my career, and I think that really helped. Just because in snowboarding, it's not if you get hurt, it's when you get hurt. So just when that happens, you're already going into the rehab process in shape, or you're feeling a slam that would normally take you out might only take you out for a shorter period. So that
Yeah.
that definitely was a good base for the longevity of my career. And then I think the biggest thing that I had to change was my mentality on how I approached competitions, especially with how long I was going. You went from winning these events and being a favorite at every event to, I could be a threat, and if things went well, do well at an event, but it wasn't like it was in the heyday. So it was go into each contest at 37
Yeah.
and whatever, and having your own personal goals, and it's not as much like winning as you have your personal goals. This is what I want to accomplish, this is what I want to do. And that was hard to kind of switch that, because every time you do an event you want to win, right? And I
Yeah.
still have that drive, but somewhat more realistic sense, you had to change that a little bit.
Yeah. That completely makes sense. Like just trying to go in it with a positive mindset, like and setting those goals for yourself. That's and like your point to the team sports, it's so true. I could have the best soccer game of my life, and then we're like lose 5-1. You're like, damn, like maybe I don't like
Yeah.
soccer today. But sports are crazy, man.
No, but back to what you're saying too, and then I'll add to that as well. And one thing that was kind of crazy was, we go to these the whole thing of snowboarding changed a little bit. So let's just go to where we are now, and like we have these camps. So, we have a camp in May in Mammoth, and I love that camp. But that camp is like, before it's a training camp. It's a private half pipe. You pay money, you get a private half pipe from this time to this time, and you can go ride. They have, now we have these airbags to learn on and things like that. So you have that camp in May, then you go to Mount Hood in June or July, and then you go to Saas-Fee for this camp called Stomping Grounds in Switzerland. And so you go to these camps, and I think another thing that changed too was just how fast I could learn tricks, because
Yeah.
there's tricks that I've had and I could do, but the evolution of that trick has changed. So like the way I did it was like, it was brand new, nobody did it, and then over time it gets a little bit smoother, and maybe the access of the trick changed. And so it took me a little bit longer to learn those tricks, and some of it maybe have different things. But one thing is like, I might have a bad habit, because when I did
Yeah.
it for so long, it wasn't wrong, so to speak, but now you've had to evolve with that. So I have like 20 years of snowboarding of bad habits that I have to break the muscle memory of to learn this trick. And so then I go to these camps. Okay, then I have to figure out, like, work on what I have, try to learn, like, work on the tricks that I've had in the past that I want to bring back, that I've quote unquote lost maybe, and then new tricks. So
Okay.
you're gotta really kind of split up your time on between those things, and then the trick's taking you a little bit longer to learn than when you were in your early 20s, where it's like, yeah, 3 tries and I'm good. And I learned a lot of my tricks without airbags and all this training aids that we have now, and it's like, now I have this airbag and it's still taking me a while to adjust and fix, and these little tweaks here and there. So I think there was the mentality of going into every event from being like the top dog to not being the top dog, but doing it for a different reason. And then learning new tricks are like the two major hurdles that I think I had to adapt over the course of my career.
Yeah. My next question actually was about your new tricks that you did in the recent Olympics. Like tell me a little bit about that. Like, do you go in knowing and training for like months and months on these like new tricks? Like you're like, I'm going to showcase this at the Olympics, or is it kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna go for it type thing?
Um, for me, I was always kind of like 0 to 100. Like, I wanted to shoot
Yeah.
for the top, and then whatever happened, like, cool. I don't really care about a fifth place. But like, for instance, like my first two tricks I have was like a frontside double cork 1260 to a backside double cork 1260. Now those are two tricks like that kind of fall into what I was saying before. Like, I had frontside double cork 1260 years and years and years ago, but the way I did it is very different than how people do them now, how I do them
Okay.
now. And then the backside double cork 1260 I've had, but again, earlier, the adaptation of that trick I did differently, and that one took me a while. I mean, I had a stretch of like some pretty big injuries that um didn't that kind of was like, okay, I'm gonna fix this trick. And then it was like the access to like the airbags, this, that, and the other. Okay, now I'm like 2 years I haven't done this trick. And then it was just when I had opportunities, it goes back into what I said again, splitting my time. How much time am I putting
Yeah.
to break these bad habits, to adjust the way that I throw that trick? the way that I'm doing it, all that stuff. So there's a lot of little pieces, but then going in, like I had the backside double cork 1260 is probably like the newest one that I wanted to do in my run.
Yeah.
And that was like last year, I probably could have done it last year in competition and I didn't really do it. And then this last off season, it was like, okay, I started doing it more on snow, more like doing a trick into it. But I actually never landed it a full run, so top to bottom. I've landed those tricks together, but never a full run. But I told my coach, like, hey, I'm gonna go out on my shield. Like, I'm going for this no matter what. If it to me, like landing a run at the Olympics with the pressure, that's nothing. I can do
Yeah.
that in my sleep. The pressure doesn't get to me. So I was like, I'm doing that no matter what. But it was just funny that the first run at the Olympics is the one I landed top to bottom, and I've never landed that like in
Yeah.
practice at the Olympics, before the Olympics. None of those I've never landed the full run. So I had confidence, but I also was willing to go out falling on a second hit, which is like the biggest bummer. The only thing worse is falling on the first hit, both runs, but which I did second run. But yeah, so I I don't like necessarily throw caution to the wind, but I also am not afraid to kind of like push it a little bit because I knew it was going to be my last Olympics. It was my last hurrah. Like I've always kind of lived with like, I don't want to have any regrets.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'd rather go out falling and doing everything that I can rather than like holding back just to say like, yeah, I landed at the Olympics, you know?
Yeah. No, that's got to be like such a good feeling, like landing something that you you weren't landing at practice.
Yeah.
That sounds like super like just surreal. Um, I think you kind of got into it, but I guess if you want to add a little bit more on like how you define success now than like as opposed to earlier in your career, I think like obviously at 37, it's not like you got last place at the Olympics. Like you still crushed
Yeah.
it. But how do you kind of like define that success of this recent one to maybe something earlier in your career?
Well, I mean, obviously, like earlier in my career, it was a lot more result based,
Yeah.
wanting to win. Now, snowboarding is difficult because, one day you can win the contest, do the exact same run, and then the next day when you're doing it, you get fifth, sixth. It's subjective. So that was like during my career, adjusting like not wanting to beat people, not wanting to get a certain score, but it's like I want to put this run down
Yeah.
because this should get me top 3 or whatever, and so then it became like, okay, what are my goals? So for instance, like at going into this Olympic year, I just needed points. Like after each contest, you get points for your placing that go towards qualifying for the Olympics. So for me, it was a marathon. Like right, every event, it's all good. If I just land a run, I'll get the points I need, and just kind of like run it that way rather than necessarily like pushing it too much because I didn't need to. I wanted to approach
Yeah.
it the marathon, not the sprint. So I would say like now it was like mostly here's the run I want to do, and then between my coach and I, the quality of that run. I can do that run, but there's different, like, I messed up this or this was, a little bit off or sketchy. So it was kind of more of like between my coach and I, like personal, like how I personally wanted to do that run. Um, and for me, like just nobody's done it at my age, and it's because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's your body's pretty beat up and all that. So for me it was like the people that know, I say like
Yeah.
they know it's like, yeah, they're 21. A lot of these kids that I'm competing against I've known since they're 8 years old, 12 years old, since they're super young.
Wow.
So and I've helped them in some sort of way, which is pretty cool. But they understand that, were they going to be able to be at this level at 37? Probably not. So it's I think that's kind of an accolade that I like, is because I've stayed at the level that I'm at for so long. So um yeah, it's just what you want. I wanted to stop competing on my time, my way, rather than somebody being like, "Well, you're not winning." Well, that's fine. It's to me there. It was more than just winning these events for
Yeah.
so long. I've been there, done that. it was just a personal thing that I wanted to do, and also to kind of prove it to myself to be doing it at my age. So it's a lot more personal than what people think around me, because I don't care what people think about my snowboarding. It's like I do it
Yeah.
because I love snowboarding, the passion I have for competing, because you have to have a strong passion for the sport to be doing it for so long. And with how my body is, you definitely have to have the passion, because it's not easy, and there's a lot of days where you're not walking very well, and your back seizing up, this, that, and the other.
Yeah. You keep mentioning winning, but I mean, honestly, like getting to like multiple Olympics, like that's a win in itself. Like I feel like if you get there,
Yeah.
like you already won. Like you don't. The performance obviously is fun to watch, fun to place and get awards, whatever. But even just getting to that stage, like honestly, like kudos to you. That's like
Thank
sick.
you. Thank you.
That's sick. Um, but like obviously, this is a big part of your life. So my next question is kind of like, what's next? Are you having like a bit of like an identity crisis? I'm assuming you'll still like snowboard, but when something like this has been part of your identity for like so long, like how are you starting to think about like what's next without like feeling like you're losing a part of yourself? Or
Yeah,
I know
that's a
it's kind
good.
of a deep.
No, it's a great question, because I get it all the time. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, luckily, I've done well in my career. I've made good choices, and so I have some time to kind of figure that out.
Yeah,
I'll be in Arizona full time. My wife's a professional golfer, so right now we split between Utah and Arizona. Um, but I'm not really sure. I have some ideas, some things that I want to do that I just need to implement. I've always had kind of ideas. Now it's the fact that I need to actually execute on that. But it also still hasn't fully hit me, because
yeah,
normally this time I'm kind of on a down slope on as much time I'm doing on the mountain, and then it would ramp back up, in May.
yeah,
Like I said, being in Mammoth for a few weeks, and then it kind of starts. So I think once like the spring and summer camps kind of pick up, and I'm not going to those, that's where it'll kind of hit a little bit more. And I have a lot of friends that have been super supportive, and they kind of have visions for me on life after snowboarding. But it's always hard, because you're always thinking like with blinders,
yeah,
and everything's kind of revolved around snowboarding, or like, oh, I can't go on this trip because I need to do this, or I have this camp, or I got to figure out my workouts and stuff like that. Because I've normally, like, I think this up until last week, it was like the longest I hadn't gone to the gym outside of like an injury. Now I'm
yeah,
back to the gym because I was going stir crazy, and I'll always do that. But I have always had these blinders on. So now, as time goes a little bit, and I can remove the blinders of just thinking about snowboarding and my snowboarding career, I can kind of see what I want to do. But trying to find my next passion, something I really love to do that makes sense. And obviously, it'd be nice if it makes some money too. But at the end of the day, I have my parents help me a lot with how to be smart with financial decisions, and so I have some time. But it's definitely something that I'm excited for, nervous for, anxious for, every kind of adjective you can think of,
yeah.
because it's just like you said, I've done this my whole life, and it's taken me to places I never thought it would take me. But it's like, okay, what now? I mean, I still, yeah, still snowboard, um, still consider myself a professional snowboarder, just not going to be competing.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to have a lot more time. It just, so like, not being on the road, 200 days out of the year or whatever, 300 days out of the year, it's going to be a little bit of a new thing for me. But I look forward to it, just because it'll be a new challenge, and finding what I want to do. And then once I find that, it'll be a new challenge that I can kind of jump in with both feet. I mean, I've already done a lot of commentating throughout my career, so I'd like to do some more of that for snowboarding. But that's, again, just more passion, not as much a career. Because snowboarding is not like the NFL. You're not getting paid like Tony Romo
Yeah.
is to commentate or anything. But I'd like to dabble in a few things, and just do things that I've always wanted to do. I've just never had the time, or never made the time to do.
You have like all the time in the world now.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of
exciting.
weird to think about, and a little
I
scary.
know. Maybe you can get into golfing too or something.
Yeah, yeah. I've been trying to. I got to get a little more respectable, and So many of my friends golf, especially in snowboarding. So I'd like to be able to. I got a lot of ground I got to make up because I never really grew up golfing, and obviously with my
Yeah.
wife being a golfer, I gotta step up a bit.
When I golf, I'm like taking chunks out of dirt. I'm not hitting the ball. So,
Yeah. So it's a learning curve for me, but again, another challenge. And um, yeah, there's just a lot of things that I've always dabbled in or wanted to do that I haven't had the time to really kind of put my energy and time into it that I can now. So it's just really kind of figuring it all out, and then mapping out a kind of a game plan, and then seeing where it takes me.
yeah. So we're both from Ohio. Coming from Ohio, Ohio's pretty flat. It's not
Yeah.
exactly like half pipe isn't in your backyard like at all.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
so back to kind of like how you got into it. What did it take like mentally to believe like this was even possible? Because I feel like if I lived in the flattest like state ever of Ohio, like yeah, our winters get cold, but I don't know if we're like, dang, like I'm gonna do that huge mountain or I don't know, like that just seems like you really had to like lock in mentally.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what I didn't know, especially early on, and then going to like the snowboard camp in the summer with my dad. Like that's where we kind of got a little bit more of a taste of like the snowboard culture and the world of snowboarding. And then I say like when I was in eighth grade, I at boarding school in Vermont,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, his dad took my dad and I to the Olympics in 2002 in Salt Lake, and
Ooh.
that's where the U.S. swept, and Ross Powers won, and I was like, holy cow! Like Ross Powers won the Olympics. He went to the school that I was currently going to,
Yeah.
and then he was coached by the guy that was coaching me, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like this is something that I could do because this was only the second Olympics that halfpipe snowboarding was in at the time, and so then at nationals that year in my age group, I won, which I was like, holy cow, like this is actually something that I could do. So I'd say like eighth grade is when like the Olympics kind of really came onto my radar, that of something I wanted to do. Before that, I was pretty young anyways, and I just like snowboarding. But then traveling around like Seven Springs had a good half pipe at the time. Boston Mills Brandywine, they had a half pipe. It wasn't necessarily as good as Seven Springs, but it kind of gave me a little bit more of a taste. But the first time I ever rode a half pipe was at Wendell's in Mount Hood when I was super young. My dad's like, you got to, because he's taking the camp too. He's like, you got to try this out. Like, I'm like, I like jumping. And he's like, yeah, but we have jumps that people build in Ohio. Like, we don't
Yeah.
have a half pipe. Try this thing out. And so, it's just like a lot of like random things that kind of came together. And like people would tell my dad, like, oh, your son has it. And it's like, I'm in the middle of the pack and in my age group at these events. So we didn't really see it. It was just something that we love to do. And then obviously being a competitive family, we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to get better and better and better just because it was so fun.
No, that's so cool. I love hearing any success stories from Ohio. A lot of my recent episodes have been success stories from Ohio, and it just like makes me feel good because a lot of people sleep on Ohio. It's
Exactly.
not
That's why it's
always.
Ohio against the world.
Yeah, it is. It is Ohio against the world. We're such a meme, but that's okay. We persevere. Now that you're retiring from like Olympic snowboarding, not snowboarding altogether. Like you said, you're always a professional snowboarder. Like, can't take that away from you. That's like just such a sick journey.
Yeah.
But you're in like a huge phase now where it's all changed. Like, you got to figure out what it is moving forward, what you like to do outside of that. And that really like plays into the theme of the podcast, like adapting to change and learning and growing. So I just kind of want to hear from you if you have maybe any advice for our listeners that maybe you can apply to yourself as well, like in this new phase, when it comes to like a big change like that.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends. Like for me, I have like a big change, but it's like a clean slate in a sense
Yeah.
too. So it's not like, some people that are switching jobs, they're like going from this to this, right? So that's the adapting, and that's going to be, I can take part of it to my life, but then I have a different part. So like, let's start, like, if you don't know what you want to do, it's like my parents always try to say, like, to find your passion, it's like what's something you enjoy to do that you would do for free, and then okay, whatever that is, do it, and then figure out a way to monetize that and make money.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just figuring out like my passions. I have a few passions. Okay, now how can I make that a career? And then adapting is always like I always tell people too, it's like you're always gonna come to some type of obstacle, and it's not about like avoiding the obstacles, it's about adapting and overcoming. And I mean, sometimes these big obstacles that you face in life seem so big in the moment, and then you adapt, you overcome this, you face it head on. Okay, then once you get through it, it either helps you in the grand scheme of things, helps you grow as a person, it helps you grow professionally. It's another notch in your belt of something that you know how to handle. But it also kind of helps shape the person you are. So like snowboarding and is like helped create the person that I am. Ohio helped create the type of person and the type of snowboarder that I am. Um, yeah, I had different things that I faced, adversity faced being from Ohio, trying to be a snowboarder, but
Yeah.
it also helped me kind of. I look at it like a big thing is appreciate every time I got to go snowboarding, every type of different terrain I got to ride. I wasn't growing up in these massive mountains and oh, I don't want to ride this place stinks. It's super small and crappy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I like riding anything. But I think it's just like you just got to face it, right? If you can, you don't want to avoid these obstacles because you're avoiding it sometimes is just kicking the problem down the road. And in some instances too, that's just going to make that obstacle grow and it's going to make the issue bigger. Just face it head on. And my dad said too, it's like kind of like sometimes you just got to make a decision and live with it, right?
Yeah.
There might not be necessarily a right one or a wrong one, but whatever it is, just make it and live with it and don't look back. And then if it's a quote unquote wrong one, then you adapt after that. You just always have to kind of roll with the punches in it and know that, you're going to be able to get through anything. It might take a little bit more work, but at the end of the day, just
Yeah.
kind of always, I think hard work perseveres. And helps the most at the end of the day. Just because, I like that quote, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I think it's true. Like if you get into a hole, you dig yourself into a hole, well, hard work will probably get you out of that hole. I mean, it might not be fun, but again, once you get out of it, you look back and it's like another notch in your belt. Now that's like another thing you've overcome
Yeah.
and another thing that you've conquered.
No, you can really do anything. Like if you work hard enough at it and you want it bad enough. I've had so many moments where I'm like, this seems like a really crazy goal, but I'm gonna put 100% in and see if it plays out.
Yeah.
And most of the time it does, just because I'm insane and I lock in. But it's such like a powerful message for people to remember, especially like if they're young and they have a dream. I think like so many people give up because they're scared of failing or getting embarrassed and hate to see it. You just kind of like gaslight yourself
Yeah.
into working hard a bit there.
Well, we just have so many. I mean, I get caught up in it too, but it's just like in the world of social media too. You're always either watching what other people are doing and
Yeah, the
or like
comparison.
worried about what people are saying, and it's just like no. I mean, I don't knock anybody that's hustling regardless, but it's also like social media is so fake too, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's just do what you love to do and what you have to do in some instances, and then just go all in because you control you. And so I think that it just find something that you want to just put everything into and do it. And sometimes you can't, right? You just need to put food on the table or a roof over your head and then be the best at whatever you do. Try to be the best at whatever you do. And that's what my parents have always said too, no matter what it is. You sell insurance, will be the best insurance salesperson. Be if you're a snowboarder, try to be the best snowboarder. No matter what you do, try to be the best at it.
Yeah,
And I think that normally it pays off.
100%. Don't sell yourself short. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you
thank
taking the
you.
time. This has been super fun conversation. I think to our listeners, keep hustling, working hard. That's probably the biggest takeaway. Keep dreaming, especially if you're from Ohio or a random state that's slept on. Like your dreams matter that much more. Like keep going for it, and then finally stay adaptable.